CW's The Flash has consistently been one of my favorite shows on TV since it premiered. That's not just because Flash is one of, if not my favorite DC hero, it's also because it was fun and over the top and had characters that I was invested in. My favorite character in the Arrowverse was even spawned from The Flash, in Cisco Ramon, due largely to his portrayal by Carlos Valdez.
This is a tragedy. I'm mourning for the death of engineering. Copper wiring to handle the processing speed from the Palmer satellite, or else your system is going to overload.
Yeah, but that hasn't happened. I mean, it hasn't happened since last week. I mean, it happened yesterday.
Where Arrow was grounded and dark, Flash was bright, surreal, and heroically epic in scale. It was a great contrast to Arrow and balanced out the lineup. So when CBS's Supergirl was announced to be coming to the CW, with the prior knowledge that Kara lived on a different Earth, questions were raised as to how to fit her in. However, with the bombshell cliffhanger Flash left us with at the end of Season 2, we knew that Flashpoint would be the main focus of the next season of Flash, or at least for the first half, before something worse may come along, following the standard big bad swap. Knowing that, speculation abound about what ramifications that Flashpoint would have on the Arrowverse moving forward, and if it may tie into the crossover for this season. What we got, however, left many people underwhelmed. It was a paradox all its own. The paradox of CW's Flashpoint. Spoilers, as per usual, I'll be talking about Flash, obviously, Supergirl, Arrow, anything having to do with the CW, Arrowverse, Legends, etc., etc. If you don't want spoilers, turn back now. You've been warned. And don't say I didn't. Okay? Alright. Heroically epic in scale. This is what we had come to expect from Flash, and while Season 3 was good in my opinion, it could have been so much better. Savitar was fine, as was Dr. Alchemy. The big issue here is that Flashpoint had little to no impact on the Arrowverse as a whole. Sure, we had the Time Remnant become Savitar after he felt used due to Flashpoint, and we had Dr. Alchemy making metas from across timelines. However, outside of Flash, we saw little in terms of an impact. Not that we even saw much of one in Flash itself, to be honest. Arrow saw the change of Diggle's kid from a girl to a boy, which may have been foreshadowed in Legends Season 1, and we saw future Barry let the Legends know that he had messed with the timeline. There wasn't anything else, though. Now, for those not in the know, Flashpoint was a huge crossover event in DC that changed the entire DC universe in some way, shape, or form, usually with a pretty big impact. On top of that, Barry's struggle to even return from the Flashpoint timeline was a huge deal. It saw him face physical and emotional hurdles that made him realize what he had done. He had to see what had happened to the world outside of his bubble to realize how deeply his decisions affected everything around him. He then tried to repair everything just to see that the damage he caused was almost completely irreversible. He had to live with the guilt that he had changed the course of the lives of the entire world, and there were hints of that in The Flash after Flashpoint. Yet it wasn't enough. It was so dumbed down for TV that it kind of spat in the face of the original Flashpoint story. To be fair, the original Flashpoint story was not perfect.
It's only just okay, and that's its real problem.
It was, however, iconic. Much like how Civil War was to Marvel. Civil War was a very flawed story, but had great potential that, when it was given a new take in the movies, worked. I, like I believe many fans did at the time, had hope that they could do the same with Flashpoint in The Flash. As it happened, it was ostensibly a stepping stone for the rest of the season's arc, though. A footnote to the story of Savitar and the struggle to save Iris. A lot of people were either on the fence about the Iris plotline or just outright hated it. I myself thought it was fine, if not a bit dragged out. I was invested in seeing whether or not they would kill off another Arrowverse character, especially after a certain bad decision from the last year. Thankfully, they weren't so ignorant as to do this, however, and the way they handled it in the end was pretty good. There were a lot of episodes that worked to build tension here, but there were just as many, if not more, that just seemed fillery. Again, I think if they had cut out a lot of the fluff, that this could have been a perfectly paced season. They could have had most of it, if not the whole of the first half of the season, be about Flashpoint. They could have had Barry going to others in the Flashpoint's Arrowverse timeline and getting them to help him to get back to the proper timeline, kind of like the original Flashpoint story. They could have made Eobard actually team up with Barry as his own powers may have disappeared due to Barry's tampering. Having more than one episode about Barry attempting to get back to his own timeline would have given the weight of his decision to create Flashpoint that much more of an impact to the audience, which in turn would have made the consequences of his actions, Killer Frost, Cisco's brother, Iris's relationship with Barry, all of these would have been much more impactful. Instead, the only one that was of significance was Caitlin becoming Killer Frost. The strained relationship with Iris was kind of just annoying, seeing as we had seen him struggle to have a relationship for 2 seasons already, and had been given a conclusive ending to it. Had Flashpoint been longer, however, coming back to see Iris was estranged to Barry would have been more emotionally driven. As far as Cisco goes, man, don't even get me started on mopey Cisco. Look, I can appreciate that Cisco was upset about his brother being alive in the previous timeline. I can appreciate that he would blame Barry for changing things. I don't want to make anyone think I don't empathize with the loss of a loved one. I've seen many people die in my own life, and I don't wish that on anyone. However, the bright, over-the-top campiness of The Flash was almost entirely gone this season, and the last thing I needed to see was the emotional heart of this show in such a depressive state on top of it. Cisco is the heart of Team Flash and the Flash show in general. He always uplifted everyone when they needed it, and to see him be stripped of that was devastating. It took Felicity talking to him in the crossover, and the rest of the Arrowverse taking umbrage with Barry's actions to get Cisco back to his nerdy, quippy, fun-loving self.
This ship is automatic, supersonic, hypnotic, funky, fresh.
We had to deal with this for 8 episodes before it got resolved. 8 weeks of episodes.
We're not letting you sacrifice yourself. There's no way. I don't care if that's what it means to be a hero. You're not a hero to me. You're my friend.
But back on topic. Arrow, as stated previously, had little to no impact from Flashpoint, as did the Legends. You know, the time travelers that fix time. But they've messed with the timeline themselves, so let he who cast the first stone or something. Anyway, Arrow, the cornerstone of the Arrowverse, saw a little impact. Sarah Diggle was now John Diggle Jr., and while this may have been alluded to elsewhere, it was still big because of the meaning behind little Sarah's name. Although it could be argued that went out the window with Sarah's resurrection, but that's another video. Arrow saw the coming of the villain Prometheus, who in the comics was created by Dr. Alchemy. In this version, nothing to do with alchemy. At all. This could have been a huge reason as to why Oliver was upset with Barry in the crossover. He did try not to be upset. This would have been a good reason, especially if they revealed Prometheus' identity prior to the crossover, and had Prometheus been the person we all hoped he would be, Tommy Merlin. Having Flashpoint be responsible for not only bringing someone back from the dead, but having it be Tommy of all people would have been an amazing twist. Instead, to get a Tommy Prometheus, we had to wait until next year's crossover, and it was a slap in the face by this point. Going back to Supergirl, the last thing they could have done with Flashpoint, which would have been fitting to the scale of the event, is bringing Kara's world Earth-32 into the world of Earth-1. Having the timeline shift be so hard that Kara's world was now one with Barry's. Have it be that not only did Barry screw up his own timeline, but that of another Earth, and it would have been a huge game changer. The potential for the stories to come from this are astronomical in scale. We didn't get this, however. We didn't get a story deserving of the event. No, instead, the CW's Flashpoint was a flash in the pan.